The lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and old paper. I sat in a stiff leather chair at 34 years old, my hands folded tightly in my lap, while my two boys waited with a neighbor. The room felt too formal, too cold for something that should have carried warmth. My father had been gone only 3 weeks, yet the space already felt like it belonged to the living more than the dead. My older sister, Lauren, sat across from me, back straight, her husband's hand resting possessively over hers. She wore the quiet confidence of someone who had always been handed the best pieces of life. My own husband, Marcus, sat beside me but might as well have been across the city. He stared at the wall, jaw tight, refusing to meet my eyes. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. The portfolio of boutique hotels in downtown Chicago and the North Shore properties will go to Lauren Thompson Reed. Lauren's smile appeared instantly, small and satisfied. Her husband squeezed her hand. They exchanged a look that said everything had gone exactly as expected. I waited. The lawyer continued, voice even. The Lakeside cabin on Willow Lake, including the surrounding 5 acres, will go to Rachel Thompson. For a moment the room held its breath. Then someone coughed. Lauren tried to hide the flicker of amusement on her face. Marcus didn't bother. A short, bitter sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but close enough. On the long drive back to our house in the suburbs, Marcus said nothing. The silence pressed against the windows like fog. When we finally pulled into the driveway, he killed the engine and stared straight ahead. That evening Lauren and her husband came over for what was supposed to be a family dinner. The table was set with the good china my mother had left behind. Halfway through the meal, Marcus raised his glass. "Well," he said, looking directly at Lauren, "at least one daughter got the real assets." Lauren laughed softly. Her husband chuckled. Even my aunt offered an awkward smile. I forced my own lips to curve, telling myself the sting would pass. But it settled deep, like a stone in still water. Later, after the guests had gone and the boys were asleep upstairs, the house grew unnaturally quiet. I stood at the sink rinsing plates when Marcus finally spoke. "A cabin," he said, voice flat. "A broken-down cabin on some forgotten lake." I kept washing. "It's still property." He turned toward me, eyes hard. "Your sister builds real wealth. You inherit garbage." The words landed heavier than I expected. I felt myself shrink inside my own skin. Then he said the words that split the night in two. "You're useless." Silence swallowed the kitchen. He glanced toward the stairs where our sons slept. "Take them. Go live in that cabin." I stared at him, waiting for the anger to cool, for him to take it back. He didn't. "You heard me," he said. "If that's what your father left you, then go live there." My hands trembled as I dried them on a towel. I didn't cry in front of him. Instead, I walked upstairs, packed 2 small suitcases with clothes for the boys, and woke them gently. The drive to Willow Lake took nearly an hour through dark country roads. The boys were exhausted. My younger son kept asking sleepily, "Mom, are we going on vacation?" I told him it was just for a little while. When we arrived, the cabin sat dark and hunched against the trees. The wooden sign hung crooked. Half the porch boards were missing. Inside, the air was thick with dust and dampness. I found one bedroom that seemed less ruined than the others, wiped the mattresses with old sheets I found in a closet, and spread our jackets over them. The boys fell asleep quickly, too tired to complain. I stood in the doorway watching their small chests rise and fall, the weight of 10 years of marriage pressing down on me. This was not the life I had imagined. Around midnight, unable to sleep, I walked into the main room. Moonlight came through cracked windows. I sat in my father's old wooden chair by the workbench and began opening drawers, not even sure what I was looking for. Old tools. Faded receipts. Dust. Then my fingers brushed against something different, a small panel at the back of the workbench that didn't quite match the rest. My hand paused. The night felt suddenly heavier, as if the cabin itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to discover what my father had left behind. The first week at the cabin felt like living inside a bruise. Each morning I woke to the sound of water lapping against the rocky shore and the creak of old timber settling. Sunlight came through gaps in the curtains and thin, dusty beams. My boys, Ethan and little Noah, tried to make it an adventure at first. They ran through the overgrown yard chasing frogs and collecting smooth stones from the lake edge. But by evening their questions grew heavier. "Mom, when are we going home?" Ethan asked one night, his small voice uncertain in the dim room. I brushed his hair back and whispered that we were making a new kind of home for now. Inside, my chest ached with the weight of keeping their world steady while mine had cracked open. I spent the days cleaning what I could. I swept years of dust from the floors, scrubbed the tiny kitchen counter until my hands were raw, and aired out the musty bedding. The cabin was small, just 3 rooms and a porch that sagged on one side, but it had been my father's quiet retreat for as long as I could remember. He used to bring me here as a girl, teaching me how to skip stones and listen to the loons at dusk. Those memories felt sharp now, like glass under bare feet. Marcus called twice. Both times his voice carried the same cold edge. "Have you come to your senses yet?" he asked the second time. "You can't raise 2 boys in that wreck. Come home, and we'll figure something out." I stood on the porch looking at the lake, the late afternoon light turning the water silver. "We're staying here," I told him quietly. He laughed, short and bitter. "Your sister is closing another deal this month. Her hotels are booked solid through the holidays. That's what success looks like, Rachel. Not whatever fantasy you're living in that broken shack." The word stung, but I didn't argue. I had spent 10 years supporting his ambitions, managing the house, raising the boys, handling every detail so he could focus on building his contracting business. Meanwhile, Lauren received praise for every new property she added to the family portfolio. My father had always watched quietly, never saying much, but his eyes had held a different kind of knowing. One afternoon, while the boys napped, I continued sorting through the clutter. In the back of a closet, I found an old toolbox that smelled of oil and sawdust. Inside were rusted wrenches, loose nails, and a few yellowed notebooks filled with my father's careful handwriting, measurements, supply lists, small sketches of the cabin. Nothing unusual, yet something kept pulling at me. A feeling that the cabin was more than the decaying walls and leaky roof everyone saw. My father had never been careless with what mattered to him. Why leave me this place if it was truly worthless? That evening after the boys were asleep, I sat at the old wooden workbench under a single hanging bulb. The lake was quiet outside, only the occasional call of a night bird breaking the stillness. I ran my hands along the bench, feeling the grooves and scars left by years of use. My fingers paused at a spot near the back where the wood felt slightly different, warmer, less worn. I pressed gently. A small panel shifted. Behind it was a narrow compartment I had missed in the daylight. Inside lay a thick manila envelope sealed with tape, a rolled survey map, and a small leather journal that smelled faintly of my father's pipe tobacco. My heart beat faster as I pulled the items out. The envelope was labeled in his handwriting. "For Rachel, when the time comes." I sat there in the dim light, the weight of the envelope heavy in my hands. Outside, the lake whispered against the shore. Inside, the cabin seemed to hold its breath with me. For the first time since Marcus had closed the door behind us, I didn't feel completely thrown away. I felt like someone had been waiting for me to arrive. The bulb above the workbench cast a warm, unsteady glow that made the shadows stretch long across the wooden floor. I sat motionless for several minutes, simply holding the manila envelope. Outside, the lake had gone completely still, as if the night itself had paused to watch. My fingers trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Inside were several documents. First, a detailed land survey map, yellowed at the edges, but marked with fresh blue ink lines. The cabin and its 5 acres were outlined clearly, but a thick blue line ran across the back portion of the property, extending toward the deeper water of Willow Lake. I traced it with my fingertip, not yet understanding. Next came a stack of letters, some from the county planning office, others from private development firms. The dates were recent, the most recent only 4 months old, when my father was already very ill. One letter from Horizon Lakeside Developments caught my eye. It spoke of a major resort and marina project planned for the north shore of Willow Lake. The proposed route would place the exit ramp and main access road directly through the back acres of this property. My breath caught. I opened another envelope. Inside was a formal purchase offer. The number made my hands go cold. It was more money than Marcus had earned in any single year of his contracting business. Far more than the value of Lauren's newest hotel acquisition, at least according to the public records I had seen. The final item was a small leather journal. I opened it to the last written page, dated 2 months before my father passed. His handwriting, once strong, had grown shaky but remained clear. Rachel, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have found your way here. I know what they will say about the will. Let them talk. The hotels are loud and obvious. This cabin is quiet, but it sits at the heart of something much larger. The county has approved the Lakeside development in principle. When the final permits come through, this land will become the gateway to the entire project. I turned down every offer because I wanted you to have the choice. You have always been the steady one. The one who waits, who sees what others miss. This is not a burden. It is your future. Protect the boys with it. And remember, strength is not always loud. Tears blurred the words. I covered my mouth to keep any sound from escaping and waking the boys. My father had known. He had watched Lauren receive the praise and the obvious wealth, while quietly safeguarding something far more valuable for me. He had seen how I had supported Marcus for years, how I had kept our home running while my sister built her empire with our family name behind her. He had chosen me not because I was the lesser daughter, but because he trusted my patience. I rolled the map out fully on the workbench. The blue line made sense now. The back acres, the part everyone dismissed as overgrown and useless, sat exactly where the new resort's main access would need to connect to the highway. Hotels, restaurants, a marina, all of it would funnel traffic right past this cabin. The humiliation from that dinner table suddenly felt smaller. Marcus's cruel words, Lauren's polite laughter. They had been laughing at something they didn't understand. I sat there until the first gray light of dawn touched the windows. The boys would wake soon. I carefully returned everything to the compartment behind the workbench panel, except for the journal that I kept with me. As I made breakfast with a few groceries I had brought, Ethan asked why I looked different this morning. I smiled and told him I had found something important that Grandpa had left for us. That afternoon, while the boys played near the water's edge under my watch, I stepped away just far enough to make a call to the county planning office. The woman who answered confirmed the resort project had received final approval last month. Construction on the access road was scheduled to begin in 4 months. It was real. The cabin was not dying. It had been waiting. And for the first time since Marcus had told me to leave, I did not feel discarded. I felt chosen. The morning light felt different after that night. I moved through the cabin with a quiet purpose I hadn't felt in years. While the boys ate cereal at the small kitchen table, I made calls from the porch, keeping my voice low. The county planning office confirmed everything again. The resort project was not just approved, it was moving faster than expected. Developers were already securing land options along the entire North Shore. I dialed the number from the most recent offer letter in my father's files. A man named Richard from Lakeside Horizon Developments answered. When I introduced myself as the new owner of the Willow Lake cabin property, there was a noticeable pause. "We've been trying to reach the owner for months," he said carefully. "Your father turned down our last 3 offers." "I know," I replied. "I'm ready to talk." We scheduled a meeting for that Friday. 3 days away. The days in between passed in a careful rhythm. I took the boys into town for groceries and school supplies, telling them we might be staying longer than I first thought. Ethan asked if Dad was coming to visit. I told him we would talk about that later. Noah simply held my hand tighter when we walked back to the car. Marcus called again on Thursday evening. His voice had lost some of its earlier sharpness, replaced by impatience. "Have you come to your senses yet?" he asked. "You can't hide in that cabin forever. The boys need stability. Lauren is closing a big investment deal this week. You should see what real success looks like." I stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and rose. "I'll see you both on Sunday night," I said quietly. Same restaurant where we had dinner after the will reading. My treat. He laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Your treat? With what money? You'll see. Friday morning, Richard arrived with 2 associates. They didn't laugh at the sagging porch or the overgrown yard. They walked the property with serious interest, taking measurements, photographing the back acres where the blue line on the map had been drawn. When we sat down in the cabin's main room, Richard slid a folder across the old wooden table. Once the access road is built, this location becomes prime, he said. We're prepared to make a strong offer today. I opened the folder. The number was even higher than the one in my father's files. It was enough to secure the boys' future for years. Education, a stable home, freedom from depending on anyone else. I'll need 48 hours, I told them calmly. Richard nodded respectfully. Of course. We're very interested, Mrs. Thompson. As their car disappeared down the gravel road, I felt the weight of my father's words settle over me. He had known. He had protected this quiet piece of land because he trusted I would see its true value when the time came. Sunday night arrived. The same upscale restaurant in the city. Lauren looked polished and confident in a tailored dress. Marcus sat beside her, wearing the expression of someone who still believed he held the upper hand. They both smiled when I walked in with the boys, though the smiles faltered slightly when they saw how steady I appeared. Settling into cabin life? Lauren asked with a hint of amusement as we took our seats. It's peaceful, I replied. Marcus leaned back, ready to admit this was a mistake. I placed the folder on the table between us. Not really. Lauren frowned. What's that? An offer, I said. For the cabin. Marcus laughed. Who would pay real money for that place? I slid the papers toward them. Lauren picked them up first. Her smile faded as she read the number. Marcus leaned over, then went completely still. He read the figure twice, his face draining of color. This isn't real, he whispered. It is, I said calmly. And that's only the opening offer. The resort project is already approved. The access road will run directly through the back of the property. In a year, this land will be worth far more than any of the hotels. Silence fell heavy over the table. Lauren's voice came out small. That's more than my newest property is worth. Yes, I said softly. Dad knew. He left the obvious assets to you because they were loud. He left me the one that would matter most when the time came. Marcus looked at me with something new in his eyes. Not anger, not pity, but raw shock. You knew. Dad knew, I corrected. And he trusted me with it. The waiter approached. Is everything okay? I closed the folder. Yes, I said. Everything is finally okay. The silence at the restaurant table stretched long enough for the clink of silverware at nearby tables to feel intrusive. Lauren stared at the offer letter as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something she could understand. Marcus sat frozen, his usual confidence shattered, eyes moving repeatedly between the folder and my face. You kept this from us? Lauren finally whispered. I didn't know until I spent the night in the cabin you all laughed at. I replied quietly. Dad left the letters and maps for me to find when I was ready. He turned down every offer because he wanted me to have the choice once the project was certain. He knew I would wait. He knew I would protect it. Marcus leaned forward, voice low and strained. Rachel, we can fix this. Come home. We'll handle the sale together. As a family. I looked at him for a long moment. The man who had called me useless and sent me and our sons into the night now wanted to handle what my father had entrusted to me alone. No, I said simply. There is no we in this anymore. Lauren's hand trembled slightly as she set the papers down. That land, it's going to be worth millions once the resort is built. Hotels, The waiter returned, sensing the tension. Is everything all right? I smiled gently. Yes. Everything is finally all right. 2 months later, I sat in the same cabin, no longer dusty and neglected. Fresh paint brightened the walls. New screens kept the insects out while letting the lake breeze in. The boys played outside on a newly repaired porch, their laughter mixing with the sound of water against the shore. I had not sold the entire property. After careful conversations with lawyers and financial advisors, I accepted a strong offer from Horizon Lakeside Developments, but retained a minority share in the new resort complex. The money that came in secured the boys' future, college funds, a stable home closer to the lake, and freedom from ever depending on someone else's approval again. I filed for divorce the same week the first payment cleared. Marcus didn't fight it the way I expected. When we met to sign papers, he looked at me differently, not with anger, but with a kind of stunned regret. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly as we left the lawyer's office. "I heard everything I needed to hear the night you told me I was useless," I replied. "The boys and I are building something new now." Lauren tried to reach out once, her voice on the phone a tempting warmth she had never shown before. "We're family, Rachel. Maybe we can work together on the resort side." I declined politely. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ash. Today I drove past the construction site on my way back from town. Cranes rose against the sky. Steel frames of what would become the new resort hotel stood tall where overgrown brush had been. The old crooked sign for the cabin was gone, but the land, my land, remained the quiet heart of it all. I parked near the water's edge and watched my son skipping stones the way my father had taught me years ago. The late sun turned the lake golden. My father had not given me the smallest asset. He had given me the strongest one. He had seen past the sagging roof and broken boards to the patient daughter who would wait for the right moment. The one who would protect what truly mattered. As the boys laughed and ran toward me, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not triumph exactly, but a quiet, enduring peace. The night Marcus told me to leave, he thought he was discarding me. He never realized he was sending me home to my future.